What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Big Six Podcast, CBS Sports Daily NFL Podcast. I'm Will Brinson. I'm your host. It is Thursday, January 27th. The news is flying fast and furious. We've got a dearth, if you will, of emergency podcast. But now we're getting them hot and heavy. Joining me to break down the Colts, the Bears hiring of Colts defensive coordinator, Matt Eberflus. Ryan Finley Wilson. What's up, buddy?
I'm very happy to announce that you misused the word dearth. Dearth means scarcity or lack thereof.
I said we have a dearth. We had a dearth of emergency podcasts, but that is being solved by the abundance of emergency podcasts.
Nice save.
Now recording.
I'm a little salty because I've already seen you 3 times today on 3 separate occasions, and it's not even noon.
It's way too much. So in the feed is a Broncos hire Nathaniel Hackett.
What?
Emergency podcast. And of course, the breakdown of what that could mean for Aaron Rodgers. This is going to be the Matt Eberflus emergency podcast. There will be more content on this feed.
Wait, I missed Debo as in the lead-in. We're doing 27 podcasts today. Am I hearing that correctly?
Roughly, yes. 27.
Holy Moses in the daytime.
And I guess technically we are giving away a $100 Paramount Plus gift card on this podcast as well. So tell your friends.
Imagine making the listeners watch all 5 podcasts today before they find out who wins the gift card. Hey, it's $100. Why not?
Yeah, that's right. Anyway, Matt Eberflus, and we will cover Matt Eberflus hired by the Colts. There'll be more content coming your way.
So you can say what it is.
Okay. God, sorry, you spooked me. Big Ben retires.
What?
Well, Big Ben, yeah, that's right. The clock has retired. Big Ben Roethlisberger has retired. We will cover that as well. And should any news break about the Jacksonville Jaguars, which it sounds like it may,
and that may end up being the sexiest conversation of the day. The Jaguar situation.
Oh, I was like, Big Ben? I don't think you want to use that phrase.
Jaguars.
Yeah, the Jaguars are going to be the most intriguing conversation if it ends up happening. I mean, watch friggin' Tom Brady. Oh, Big Ben, did you think you were going to have more than an hour of people talk? What? Big Ben retired? Okay, you know what? I'm not going to do it.
God almighty.
Matt Eberflus hired by the
squirrel.
Chicago Bears. Is it weird to you, Wilson, that the Chicago Bears fired Ryan P. and Matt and decided to hire Ryan P. and Matt?
Oh, I was wondering where you're going with that.
They fired Ryan Pace and they fired Matt Nagy and they hired another Ryan P. and another Matt. I mean, it doesn't matter at the end of the day that you would do that, but it's kind of weird, right?
No, it's a coincidence for sure. I thought it was weird that you were using first names because you have such vitriol towards Debo and the rest of us when we use Doug to describe Doug Peterson. But maybe the case is they got the wrong Matt and Ryan the first time, and this time they got the right ones.
They just keep hiring all the Ryan P's and Matts until it finally.
Although, Matt Eberflus, as we'll talk about, is a defensive guy. We'll see what that means for Justin Fields and an offense that wasn't very good.
I think all the things that you hear from Bears fans is that they're like, this is fine. Don't care. Tell us who the offensive coordinator is. And we won't know who that offensive coordinator is until, of course, they hire him. I think the Matt Eberflus hire is kind of interesting. He's been a guy that sort of floats around on the radar as a possible head coaching hire for the past few years. He was brought to Indianapolis, not by Frank Reich, but by Josh McDaniels.
Wait, Josh McDaniels was the coach in Indianapolis?
He never was. He agreed to be the coach and then bailed at the last second, left the Colts at the altar. Eberflus was already in place, hired away from the Cowboys to be McDaniels' handpicked defensive coordinator. McDaniels bails. Eberflus sticks around in Indianapolis with Frank Reich, which is not something he had to do, and has been there for the past 4 years, has really engineered an outstanding defense in Indianapolis. And has, gotten to, learn under Frank Reich. We saw Nick Sirianni leave and go to Philadelphia, and he's had success. I think there's probably something to the idea of not that Frank Reich's coaching tree is going to be good, but just that Frank Reich is a good head coach and probably an open book for the people who work with him. Indianapolis second in the NFL in takeaways in 2021 with 33. and 22.2 points per game allowed since 2018 when Eberflus got there, 10th in the NFL. He runs a zone defense, which, I guess Bears fans will love because Lovie Smith or hate maybe. I think more importantly though is if he is a good head coach and who will he hire. The one name I saw that was brought up is Eagles passing game coordinator Kevin Patullo, who I believe left the Colts with Nick Sirianni, but Debo might know that better than me.
Nick Sirianni and the Eagles, by the way, have the youngest coaching staff in the NFL. The Athletic did a report on this, and it was of interest to me because the Steelers have one of the oldest that weighs neither here nor there. But you mentioned possibly the passing game coordinator going from Philly to Chicago. Something else worth noting, our Jason Lockenford tweeted out on Thursday morning as we're talking about this news that Trent Baalke, the Jags GM, as we sit here, and that may change, had sort of hitched his wagon to Bill O'Brien and then also Matt Eberflus. And now Eberflus obviously isn't coming to Jacksonville because he took the Bears job. And things in Jacksonville are quite fluid, in part perhaps because Eberflus is now in Chicago as their new head coach.
Indeed. I saw this pointed out on Twitter. This is actually from Greg Gabriel, former Bears scout who gets angry at people online. But he reported a few days ago that Matt Eberflus and Ryan Poles have the same agent, which is certainly interesting from that perspective. I think a little bit because of this feels like a little bit of a domino situation, musical chair situation. We don't know right now as we're recording this who the Jacksonville Jaguars head coach will be. That info is coming. But the Broncos, when they hired Nathaniel Hackett, he was on the list of finalists for the Jaguars job, as was Matt Eberflus. So I think there's probably some, a push in Chicago to all right, if the Broncos are going to get Hackett, and will that make the Jaguars go after Eberflus? Do we need to go ahead and make a move and grab him now? I would guess that was sort of the impetus for that to a degree.
Yeah, I think so. Also, Kevin Fishbane, who I think covers the Bears. Let's see.
Yes.
Yeah, he covers the Bears for the Athletic. Tweeted this out just a short time ago. You know who else worked with Eberflus in Cleveland and Dallas? One Robert Ryan.
Ooh, Rob Ryan, DC.
I don't know what he's been up to, but presumably he can still coordinate up a defense.
Wendy's. No, he's on.
He's working at Wendy's. Is that what he said? Sir, this is a Wendy's.
I love Rob Ryan. He is the linebackers coach for the Ravens currently. So he would obviously take the defensive coordinator job in Chicago if that was offered to him. And I feel like Bears fans would embrace Rob Ryan.
He feels like a Chicago type. Right. He feels like he's right out of the SNL skit with Norm and Chris Farley hitting each other in the chest and with heart attacks and whatnot.
Yes. Rob Ryan. I mean, you mean with Buddy Ryan's Bears?
There you go.
Yeah. Obviously, Rob Ryan's dad. Look, we're a little loopy too, by the way. It took me a second to get that connection as well. But yeah, I think I think the Jaguars situation had a lot to do. Their finalists were Byron Leftwich, Matt Eberflus, and Nathaniel Hackett. So I think that the Jaguars sort of trying to figure out who they wanted to hire maybe had a lot to do with the quickness with which we saw these two hires happen. We mentioned, of course, that the Hackett hire happened on Thursday morning, and now the Eberflus hire happens on Thursday, right around noon Eastern time.
Also worth noting, and JLC tweeted this out, Bill O'Brien was in the early interviews, but apparently the interview went terribly. So he wasn't one of the finalists. Also a Baalke guy. Yep,
that is correct. And again, we'll get to the Jaguars in a minute. I think it's, for the Bears, I think it's tough to be super enthusiastic about this hire. Now, it'll probably end up being a good hire. I'm not saying you can't be excited about it if you're a Bears fan.
No, that was going to be my question. Let me ask you this. If you're a Bears fan, would you be more excited about Eberflus or Nathaniel Hackett? And we know just as much about either guy coming into this conversation, but who are you happier about as just the average Bears fan?
I think as a Bears fan, you would prefer Hackett because he's an offensive guy.
Right, exactly.
I mean, that's the thing for Chicago is they're like, look, we've had great defenses for 30, 40 years. We don't need a great defense. What we need is someone to fix the quarterback position. And you have Justin Fields, who you drafted with a first-round pick. You you don't. And look, again, Eberflus might bring in a great OC. We don't know who it is. We'll see. It's hard to predict who he's going to bring in because he was in Indianapolis and he was in Dallas before that. As you mentioned, Cleveland as well. But because he was like jumped to Indy with McDaniels, like what I'm saying? Like, it's hard to kind of definitively predict which direction he'll go from an offensive coordinating standpoint.
Well, hopefully they asked him that question in the interview.
I would presume that they have talked.
How much conversation do you think Ryan Poles had in the hire? Because he was just hired the other day.
So that was going to be my next point. I talked to, it was like Joe Ostrowski and the BetQL folks on Odyssey just before this doing a Radiohead. And they're based out of Chicago. And Joe is a big Bears fan. The issue is, remember we talked about the George McCaskey press conference from a few weeks ago where they fired Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy, and
I'm just a fan.
And I'm just a fan. I'm not a football guy. He said that I swear, unless I'm crazy, I'm 90% sure he said this. If you're listening, if you're watching the chat, youtube.com/pick6, and you think you're wrong, and I'm wrong, and I got this off, let me know by all means. But I believe that George McCaskey said that the GM was going to hire the head coach. Now, he did change the power structure in Chicago this year where the GM and the head coach are going to report to him, the fan, not a football guy. Because that was his whole thing. He's like, I'm not a football guy. Why would I be in charge of hiring it? They bring in Bill Polian as a consultant for the search. Ernie, of course, he was a consultant for the Matt Nagy or the Ryan Pace search. And as you point out, Wilson, they hire Ryan Poles on Wednesday afternoon, and they send out the hype video where he's getting
arrived in a white Mercedes, I believe.
Yeah, he pulls up in a Mercedes and hops out. And it's like, I think the Bears team probably thought it was like, oh, look at that cool like smoke coming off. It's like that's exhaust and that's CO2, and you shouldn't have your camera near that. That's dangerous for you. You don't want to inhale that. Walks in the building. It's like the new hype video. Like, let's go to work, Bears fans. So we have to either presume that Ryan Poles is so good at his job that he interviewed 3 candidates in the span of 12 hours, or we have to assume that the Bears, instead of letting the GM hire the head coach, presented the GM with 3 candidates and he interviewed them in 12 hours, or simply that they said, you're our GM, but we're also picking who the head coach is. I think the latter is probably the most likely.
Well, check Slack. I don't know how the Bears blog tweeted this out, and I'm trying to think. I don't know them, and I don't know how often they
get. Yeah. At the Bears blog said there were 2 distinct. Throw it out there. 2 distinct coach camps in the lead up to the Ryan Poles hiring. Bill Polian and George McCaskey wanted Jim Caldwell. Ted and the rest wanted Dan Quinn, and Poles went his own way.
I wonder, assuming this is true, I wonder if Dan Quinn, after he heard about this, said, "Well, just forget it. I'm going back. This is the job I wanted. I'm going back to Dallas," because he has since said that. We don't know, but so Poles came in from the hype video, put his bag down, and then made a call to Matt Eberflus immediately. Apparently, this is what happened.
So, yeah, I mean that is entirely possible. I guess my concern would be if, like, why would you operate this way? Is my concern.
What do you mean?
Like, you hire a GM and then he hired a coach within 24 hours, and I guess like.
This is all speculation, but what if during the interview they said to Poles, okay, this is our list. Who do you like and why? And maybe that helped sort of jumpstart the conversation. The same conversation with, okay, this is our quarterback. Do you want to go with this person or that person, assuming you get the job? But right, it's still a pretty quick turnaround.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Is like, I mean, look, don't get me wrong. If you're a GM in the NFL, or if you're a GM candidate in the NFL, you have a list of guys you want to hire as your head coach. I mean, if you're an up and coming personnel guy, you have an idea of who you want to hire. And at 9:18 p.m. on Wednesday evening, the Bears tweeted out that GM Ryan Poles has completed interviews with head coach candidates Matt Eberflus and Dan Quinn. So he banged out those interviews yesterday. I guess I just wonder why the Bears would trim down the list of candidates to 3, which we understand that according to reports, that's what was going on. And then hire their GM and then say, I mean, essentially they said like, you can pick between these 3 guys, it felt like. And maybe Eberflus was this guy. I don't know. It's just a really weird way of doing business and flies in the face of what they said they wanted to do is my whole point.
Yeah, no, it's curious, but I don't want to give them the benefit of the doubt because they've done some things,
Correct.
ownership, that makes you go, oh boy, what are we doing here? They feel more confident than the Jaguars and the Texans. If moral victories makes you feel good. But I think, and Pete Prisco just pointed this out, you can have a defensive coach, and you sort of talked about this as well. Sean McDermott's had a lot of success because of Brian Daboll letting him do his thing. Obviously, Bill Belichick is a defensive guy, quote unquote, but I'm sure he could probably coordinate up an offense with no issue. Mike Tomlin's another example, who got done with a franchise quarterback and some good at times, but not always good offensive coordinator. So the Bears appear to have a franchise quarterback in Justin Fields. We don't really know. The offensive line is terrible. The skill position players, not much depth there, and Allen Robinson's probably leaving. And you need an offensive coordinator to sort of fix things. I'll just throw this name out there. Matt Nagy's available. That's a joke.
All right. So worth noting that apparently, according to some reports that are sort of popping up now, Eberflus and Ryan Poles have had a very good relationship over the last few years. And
what does that mean? One was in Indy and one was in Kansas City.
Just that they know each other and that they're buddies. I mean, I'm just saying that not that they work together. All right. Let's sort of walk it through this way, and we'll get out of the Bears. If you're watching on YouTube, don't close out because we'll keep going on other news that's around the NFL. If you're listening on the podcast, by the way, throw that 5-star rating on Spotify, and we'll have more podcasts in the feed. But okay, if the Bears brought in Ryan Poles, and Ryan Poles said before they brought him in, I'm going to make the decision on the hire. I'm not going to hire who you guys want me to. And then went and hired Matt Eberflus. I feel, as you said, Wilson, I feel a lot better about how that happens versus the Bears picking a coach and saying, hey, Poles, this is your guy. On the other hand, if Ryan Poles did just that and ended up hiring his guy, Matt Eberflus, and it wasn't the guy that management wanted and that the search firm, or Bill Polian, I guess is the search firm, told them to hire, then you have to think that there'll be a shorter leash because McCaskey will turn around and say, Mom, he didn't hire the guy I wanted him to. Let's fire him.
He's just a fan, though. So maybe he takes a back seat. I don't know. I sort of hope in a Game of Thrones fashion that Ryan Poles just came out and announced who he wanted, and they were about to make the call to Dan Quinn. Or
that's sort of what it sounds like happened.
No.
Not that he announced it without anyone telling anybody, but that he's like, look,
good for Ryan Poles, because it sounds like in Jacksonville there's a similar type situation going on. And when there are only 32 of these jobs, you're willing to historically put up with a lot of crap that inevitably gets you fired. And if Ryan Poles said, look, man, this is not the way I want to go. Jim Caldwell's in his mid to late 60s. I don't think Dan Quinn's the guy for me, or whatever the conversation may have been based on this report. I want Matt Eberflus. Then either you want Ryan Poles or not. So you can get 1.5 of the things you want, Ryan Poles and Eberflus, or you can get 0 of the things you want without the GM and the head coach. So I think the Bears could take a lesson from successful franchises where the owner typically stays in the background. I think that's the takeaway.
One other name just to throw out there that could potentially make sense, and there's some Colts connections, but I can't remember if they crossed over. I'd have to, and he's already been there and worked in this organization, but Pep Hamilton could make sense as a guy who's done a lot of good work with younger quarterbacks, currently with the Houston Texans, declined to interview with the Carolina Panthers, who would eventually go on to hire McAdoo, old Benny Mac. Maybe he's a name to watch for Chicago as well. Okay. And look, there's, this is a hard one to unpack, like fresh off an emergency podcast, because we know Eberflus and what he's done with the defense. We don't know who he's hiring as an offensive coordinator. And I do think for Bears fans, that is the number one concern about who is going to be in charge of managing and handling and working closely with Justin Fields.
Yeah,
That's ultimately what it boils down to.
Consensus seems to be wait and see, because we need to find out who's going to help Justin Fields become Justin Fields.
Correct. Okay, that'll do it for the Matt Eberflus Hired by Chicago Bears Emergency Podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, don't hang up. We will still give away a $100 Paramount Plus gift card. If you're listening to the podcast, there will be more in your feed. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Talk to you soon. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast, CBS Sports Daily NFL Podcast. I'm Will Brinson. I'm your host. It is still
Groundhog Day.
Yes. It is still Thursday, January 27th, and it is another emergency podcast. Joining me to break down the eternal departure from the NFL of Big Ben Roethlisberger, Ryan Wilson. Wilson, this sad day for you as a Steelers fan is finally upon us. Big Ben Roethlisberger has retired. And when I say sad day, I mean you're probably happy to be finally moving on.
No, I think you are, which is what you made it sound like when we did HQ. And also worth noting, it is in my contract that John Breach cannot show up I memorialize Ben Roethlisberger. And I think Debo has some video that might end up making me cry.
Breach is 100% asleep, right?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
But enough about Breach. Debo, do we have that queued up? I have my tissues ready.
I don't know how to put into words what the game of football has meant to me and what a blessing it has been. While I know with confidence I have given my all to the game, I am overwhelmed with gratitude for all it has given me. A boy from Findlay, Ohio with NFL dreams, developed in Oxford at Miami University, blessed with the honor of 18 seasons as a Pittsburgh Steeler and a place to call home. The journey has been exhilarating, defined by relationships and fueled by a spirit of competition. Yet the time has come to clean up my locker, hang up my cleats, and continue to be all I can be to my wife and children. I retire from football, a truly grateful man.
So the biggest takeaway for me, and I say this as a father, is that when there was the cut to the entire family sitting on the couch, the youngest son on the far right as you're looking at the screen is like, I definitely do not want to be here. I'm trying to play with my Legos, and I got to sit here while my dad reads a sheet of paper. Let's hurry this thing up and get on with it. And I thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, I mean, first of all,
yourself, Dad, you just said you can't put it into words, but then you're putting it into words.
In a very tiny type on a big sheet of paper. Let's wrap this thing up, old man.
Hey, by the way, shout out to podcast listener, YouTube podcast viewer, Matt Boatwright, who has been asking for this podcast.
Yeah, look at that poor kid. He's like, come on, dude. If you're watching on YouTube.
I would not have predicted that the Roethlisberger family looked so family-ish.
Yeah, he obviously the last 10 years, I think he tried to sort things out through the grace of Jesus Christ, his Lord and Savior. But
he's gotten very religious.
He's gotten very religious. But
good for her. He's been to church.
That's right. But anyway, I think first ballot Hall of Famer, slam dunk. Hopefully he gets in before Matthew Stafford does, but I don't think there's any dispute about that. Top 5 best quarterback in the last 30, 40 years?
I don't know.
No. Just say it, Princeton. You don't have to think about that.
I mean, well, if you let's say
since 2000.
I was going to say since 2004.
All right, since this century.
All right, let's look at Big Ben in context. I'm going to ask you this first: is he the greatest Steelers player?
Yes. Next
Steelers
question.
player.
Yes. Next question.
Greatest Steelers player of all time?
Yes.
Okay, I was going to say greatest quarterback for sure. Do you think he's the greatest Steelers player of all time? There's some really good Steelers players.
Okay, who's better? Plexico Burress. Who else?
I mean, all right. So you think hands down, no questions asked, greatest Steelers player of all time?
Yes. He's better than Terry Bradshaw. Terry Bradshaw won 4 Super Bowls, but Terry Bradshaw certainly didn't wing the ball around as often and for as long as Ben Roethlisberger.
Okay.
I don't think
I don't have a doubt that he's, I mean, like Mean Joe Green.
Come on.
Franco Harris. Jerome Bettis.
You're going to make the argument that the running backs are better than Ben Roethlisberger. Okay.
I'm just asking Lynn Swan.
There's a lot of Troy Polamalu in the conversations, and I get it. I love Troy. Troy's in the conversation as top 5, but come on now. All right, what's your other question? Oh, we're doing since this century. Who are the better quarterbacks?
Quarterbacks was all right. So Big Ben, never a member of a losing team in his 18 years with the Steelers. 165 career regular season wins, fifth most by a quarterback in NFL history. 64,088 career passing yards,
Fifth all time, not fifth since 2000, fifth all time. Debo, I don't see Donovan McNabb up there. Go ahead.
And one of 12 starting quarterbacks to win multiple Super Bowl titles. Look, there's no questioning. He has more passing yards than Phillip Rivers, Dan Marino. Matt Ryan will probably pass him substantially more than Eli Manning. Aaron Rodgers, kind of a dogfight to catch him because Rodgers has 55,360.
Well, Rodgers was drafted in 05, didn't start playing until 08 because the guy named Favre there.
I mean, he has 15,000 more passing yards than Matthew Stafford. Like he's
Tom Brady.
He's pretty much locked into that number 5 spot until Matt Ryan passes him, I would think.
Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers, and then who else?
Breeze.
Breeze. Okay, yep, I'll give you that one. Good one. Debo had that one in the chamber.
No, I mean, at best, I think he's 5. You can start to have the conversation around 5 if we're talking this century.
That's right.
If we're talking,
I'm waiting for you to bring up your dumb name. Go ahead, say it.
I'm not going to suggest that Phillip Rivers would rank above Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, look, Pete Prisco said on HQ that Rivers is the better quarterback, and I agree. I agree with this stance. I think Phillip Rivers is the best quarterback from that draft class. Ben Roethlisberger, by far and away, the best career in that draft class, and then Eli Manning, best last name. And
I disagree with that.
Ben and Rivers.
That's fine. And I said this on HQ. Bill Cowher apparently loved Phillip Rivers.
Yep.
And wanted to take him. Obviously, Rivers went top 3 or whatever. I can't remember the order. And then they also were interested in Sean Andrews, the guard out of Arkansas, who ended up going to Debo's Eagles, a few picks later. And the late Dan Rooney said, hey, guys, remember that time in 1983 when we passed on Dan Marino and took Gabe Rivera, the nose tackle? Let's not do that again. And that's how they ended up with Roethlisberger. So I don't know how much truth there is to that story. It's a great story to tell. But it was obviously the right decision because it changed the course of that organization.
Yeah, I mean, Bill Cowher, Hall of Fame coach, not because of Big Ben, but certainly solidified it by getting Big Ben and winning that first Super Bowl. And then, I mean, like when Big Ben got drafted, he was – I mean, I vaguely remember it because it was 2004. My goodness, it's been 18 years.
First year of Heel Sock Steelers. If you want to go back and relive every game,
Ryan Wilson's blog spot. The conversation was okay. Eli, like Rivers and Eli, were definitely going to go ahead of Big Ben, but there were people who were saying Big Ben might be the best guy out of all of these quarterbacks. And I mean, I do think the fact that he went to Pittsburgh, drastically changes how we view him as a player. Like if he goes to the Chargers, I don't think, and the same can be said for Eli, I don't think you see those guys win 2 Super Bowls each if they're playing for the Chargers because the Chargers love to charger. Going to Pittsburgh, playing for a team that had an elite level defense already in place, that had a good run game and a great head coach, made life a lot easier on Ben out of the gate. He was a game manager early on, which is what you want your rookie quarterbacks to be. You want to be able to pound the football, in the run game. You want to be able to lean on your defense and not ask your rookie quarterback to do too much, particularly in the early 2000s when, high octane passing offenses were still, fairly minimal in terms of, what you saw out there. You have greatest show on turf, an exception to the rule. Ben developed into a great quarterback, had off-field issues, which I'm sure we'll discuss, but, had one of the all-time great throws in Super Bowl history to win that second Super Bowl when he hit Santonio Holmes in the end zone to beat the Cardinals and secure his second Super Bowl. Now, he hadn't been back to the Super Bowl since then, right? He's 2 for 2, I think.
Yeah, 2010 to 2011 Super Bowl. So I'm looking back through Heel Sock Steelers, March 30th, 2004. Here's what I wrote. I'm no scout. No one ever asked my opinion, but the Steelers' primary need isn't a quarterback because Tommy Maddox had played serviceably in 2002.
You wrote that ahead of after Big Ben was drafted.
And I don't think it makes sense to take the 3rd best quarterback with the 11th pick, even though he may be. But I will say this: I have always been on the no Phillip Rivers bandwagon, even back 16,
Oh,
17,
yeah, you're
18 years
Carolina
ago.
Hawk. You got a bunch of you didn't want an
So
NC State quarterback.
pretty
brother.
funny. I haven't looked at this blog spot in years.
Oh,
But,
Ben, I'm an idiot. Ben went to the Super Bowl against the Packers and lost to
Yeah,
first Super Bowl. My first Super Bowl.
I was looking that up, so I didn't hear what you said. But they lost to the Packers in February 2011, and they won. They went 3 times. 2005, they beat the Seahawks, and that game had been during Twitter. People that it would have been a S show because there were so many. The fans felt like there was one-sided
The
officiating.
referees and Jerome Bettis references were
Right. And then, of course, 2008. And also, I don't know if you remember, Preston, because you were a wee lad, as they say, during the media day with Joey Porter called out the Seahawks tackle, Jeremy. I can't remember his name. He was dating Hope Solo. Like, they dated for a while. And Jeremy Stevens, I mean. Is that his name, Jeremy Stevens? Yeah,
yes.
who had some off-field issues, and he called him out as being soft, and like that again would have been something that would have blown up.
Right.
But there was no Twitter. And then 2008, of course, the San Antonio Holmes coach, the catch that you mentioned in the back of the end zone.
Yeah. Yeah, my bad. I forgot. Ben obviously went to a third Super Bowl. It was my first Super Bowl in Dallas. So he won 2 and then lost his third.
Yeah.
And then hasn't been back since, primarily because of the Patriots and the Chiefs.
Yeah. In fact, I made a list of some of my favorite Big Ben moments, if you want to hear them. And I would actually, if people in the chats have their favorite Big Ben moments, put them in there, and I'll see if Josh is my memory.
Yeah, if you got a great, if you have a Ben Roethlisberger moment,
what's yours as someone who is not a fan? What sticks out to you immediately when you think of a play Big Ben made? Is it Santonio? Is it something else?
Yeah, I mean, my thing with Big Ben is that inherently, just like with Eli Manning, as a Rivers guy, I always sort of rooted against Ben.
I was going to say, you may not have liked him.
Oh, no, I didn't like Ben. Hated Ben. Hated Eli. Didn't want him to succeed because of,
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. And so I don't know what my favorite Big Ben moment. Why don't we start with, why don't you?
Debo, do you have one as someone who was a fan of a team across the state?
No.
Tito hates Big Ben.
I didn't even watch the Steelers Cardinals Super Bowl live. I watched American Gangster in my room because I was so upset at the Eagles losing to the Cardinals the week before in the NFC Championship. I just boycotted that Super Bowl entirely. So like the next day I was like, wow, it was a pretty good throw.
It was an all-time great throw.
My man. Did you enjoy that part of the movie, Debo? I think it's from American Gangster, right? Denzel saying, my man.
Oh, yeah. No, that's from Training Day, I think.
No, it's not.
Oh, that is American Gangster.
Thank you.
Look, I'm spacey today. So
is that's actually less weird than watching Uncut Gems on your iPhone as you try to go to sleep. I'll give you that. At least you had a reason.
Skipping the Super Bowl to watch American Gangster, that's more weird than watching Uncut Gems on your
he was upset, and I understand that. So here's some of my favorite memories in random order. So 2-game stretch in 2014, Ben Roethlisberger threw 12 touchdowns, 860 total yards, 94 points scored as they beat the Colts and the Ravens, 0 interceptions, which is the most remarkable part of that, perhaps. So that's one of them. Oh, gosh, this is an amazing one. The 2010 season when they went to the Super Bowl, they got there only because in the AFC Championship game against the Ravens, which they always seem to play, it was a rookie, I think his name was Antonio Brown. May I remember him? 3rd and 19, Roethlisberger uncorks one in the fourth quarter, 58 yards. AB catches it with the side of his helmet to lead them to the eventual win. I think it was 31-24 that game may have ended up. We talk about Aaron Rodgers as a better quarterback over the last century than Big Ben in that top 5 there. They met in 2009 in Pittsburgh. Towards the end of the season, neither team was going to the playoffs, and they combined for 4 million points. Last-second touchdown to Mike Wallace in the end zone on a game where there was literally no defense. And, of course, the Santonio Holmes catch we talked about, unbelievable. 2 plays before that, Santonio Holmes dropped a pass on the other side in the end zone that looked like it would have sealed the game. And even like a month before that, week 15, Santonio made another fantastic catch at the end of the game to beat the Ravens to help secure the division, I believe. So, and those are just a handful of ones, not even the ones early on in Big Ben's career.
My favorite moment is probably the quarterback sneak he attempted this year.
Oh, stop it.
When he fell flat on his face and didn't pick up a yard, despite having a gaping hole in the middle there. No, I mean, I always feel like.
Oh, sorry, I forgot. And I'm surprised you. Power Packers 90. When he tackled when Jerome Bettis fumbled in the AFC divisional round in 2005 against the Colts, and Big Ben had to tackle Nick Harper to save the game-winning, or what could possibly be the game-winning touchdown return, and then Vanderjack kicked one sideways when they had an opportunity to tie it later. I forgot about that one. That's a good one.
I would say that, and look at that, most wins all time, including playoffs, by a quarterback and coach combination. Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, 249. Ben Roethlisberger and Mike Tomlin, had they just been able to beat the Chiefs, would have secured their solo place in number 2, but are tied with Drew Brees and Sean Payton. So that those two probably going to stand for a while. I would guess, golly, I wonder who. So, Tom, if you're watching on YouTube, by the way, smash the like button if you're watching on YouTube. Brady Belichick, number 1, 249. That is probably never going to be broken. I mean, it'd be maybe. I mean,
no, never
getting broken. Roethlisberger, Mike Tomlin, and Brees Payton, 144 each. Marino and Shula, 122, and Noel Bradshaw, 121. Wild that there's two. That just shows you about the Steelers and the continuity that they've had.
I think that probably the next most likely candidates are Bill Belichick and McCorkle Jones.
I was going to say,
That's good.
Patrick Mahomes already 50 career wins, and that's not even including playoffs. So you factor in,
Yep,
I don't know, round 55.
Yeah. No, he's got 8.
More than that, yeah.
Because he had 4.
10 years is 50.
He has 8 playoff wins, so 58
Yeah,
for Mahomes and Reed.
So
they'll probably get to number 2 unless something,
So 10 years, they average 11 wins a year. That's 110 plus 50, so that's 160. So they get to number 2. But that's 10 wins of averaging 11 wins a year. Is that doable?
Yes.
No.
I think the bigger concern is like, will Andy Reid be around that long?
Right, exactly, because he has to be in the 60s by now.
Oh,
Oh, he's got his Miami jersey on. Never mind. You're welcome here, Breach.
Guys, I heard Ben Roethlisberger retired.
Why are you smiling ear to ear now that the division belongs to the Bengals? It goes through
No
Cincinnati
smiling.
now.
Ryan, you got your Steelers stuff on. I had to come on and join you guys. Look,
So, Breach, let me ask you this:
Yeah.
What is your favorite or least favorite Big Ben memory? Not the memory of the playoff loss in 2015, because he got carted off the field as those terrible Bengals fans were throwing things at him. But your specific Big Ben memory that you may.
By
Like
the way,
him
I
for
feel
or
like
hate
I'm
him for?
terrible about specific memories with quarterbacks. Like I have like even with like Peyton Manning. I mean, maybe Tom Brady's a little bit different.
I don't have specific memories either for generally speaking, but like the quarterback stuff, you sort of remember.
Also, it's your quarterback, like,
Right, that's what I mean.
But with Ben, for me, all like what I mostly when I think of Ben Roethlisberger, I think about him outside the pocket with like 2 defenders draped on him, and he's just shrugging him off and then bombing the ball down the field. That's when Ben was at his peak, like that dude was, I mean, sort of Cam Newton-esque, just in terms of like Josh Allen, like
Better. Although Cam Newton 2015 was pretty good.
I mean, like, I'm not saying that I'm not saying Ben was like Josh Allen. I'm saying that for a modern day comp, for someone who can shrug off defenders the way that he can. I mean, most quarterbacks can't do that. Like we haven't seen that many quarterbacks with that mobility and that strength, that combination, just like toss defenders to the side the way Ben did oftentimes during his career.
All right, Breach, what do you got?
I'll give you a good one, a bad one. I'll start with the good. I have a couple good ones because obviously, Ben's football career started at Miami of Ohio, and I was there while he was there. And for me, you go to most people who were raised in Ohio, I would say grow up huge Ohio State fans as far as college goes. But the fact that I was at a school that had a top 10 team in the country, and that was all because of Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, you're talking about a guy who was playing with, 2-star recruits at a MAC school, and they were slaughtering everybody. I think my favorite memory was they went to the GMAC Bowl that year, played Bobby Petrino, like the most hated guy. Even then was hated because he was just job jumping. Everybody knew he was just always looking for the next job to take. And Louisville was favored over Miami, and everybody's just like, are you kidding me? We're going to slaughter them. But we go there, play them in Mobile, Alabama, and Miami wins 49-28. And I think it was 7 touchdown passes. I want to say maybe it was 6, but Roethlisberger just diced up Louisville. It was so cool to see his career end like that. Then he announced he was going to the NFL draft after that. All downhill from there.
Let's see. That was 2004. So the Bengals had just drafted Carson Palmer.
That was the 2003 college season. Yeah, 2004 draft.
So they had Carson Palmer. So you weren't I'm assuming you didn't want them to get.
No. You know what? Honestly, during the draft, I was literally I thought personally Roethlisberger was better than Manning and Rivers that year, but that's I went to Miami with him. That's part homer. I didn't watch all of Eli Manning's games. I didn't watch all of Phillip Rivers' games, but I did watch all of Ben Roethlisberger's games, and I thought that he could absolutely succeed in the NFL, and I thought he would. So during the draft, though, I thought for sure he would be one of the first two quarterbacks taken. I was like, maybe they'll go with Eli, and then Ben will be the second, or maybe they'll get Rivers. I did not think he would be the third. But
by the way, sorry to interrupt you. He threw 4 touchdowns, no interceptions in that game. You remembered it twice as much, but
I mean, it was 49. I know they scored 49. I knew Ben threw a bunch of touchdown passes.
There you go.
Yeah. So literally in that draft, I was only rooting for him not to go to the Steelers. I didn't care where he. Yeah, I was like, because you're the Bengals. The Bengals had just gotten Carson Palmer. So yeah, I didn't expect him, didn't want him to go to the Bengals. I knew that wasn't going to happen, but I was like, I don't care where he goes as long as he doesn't go to Pittsburgh. And boom, the 11th pick gets announced, and I'm just like, oh my God.
By the way, there's another backstory to this. I forgot about this. So go back to the 2003 season. Steelers are terrible. They win 6 games that year because Tommy Maddox was Tommy Maddox. I think it's week 17. Jamal Lewis, is trying to get to 2,000 rushing yards, and the Ravens are playing the Steelers either week 17 or week 16. And so Brian Billick, the coach at the time of the Ravens, leaves Jamal Lewis in there to try to get him to reach his mark. They end up beating the Steelers, which allows the Steelers, instead of resting their starters, Ravens going to the playoffs. It allows the Steelers to have the 11th pick as opposed to the 14th or pick or whatever it would have been. So Brian Billick is in part responsible for allowing your dreams to be crushed for a decade or so, Breach.
Well, and let's not forget too that the Browns at least passed on him once.
They
right?
took the tight end Kellen Winslow Jr.
That's right. They took Kellen Winslow Jr. instead of Big Ben, and Ben absolutely destroyed.
We talk about Aaron Rodgers holding grudges. Big Ben, a little more quiet about it, holds grudges as well. A little quieter about it.
Destroyed the Browns for his. He grew up a Browns fan, I think, right?
I believe so.
He's in Findlay, I think. Yeah,
he's in Findlay. Yeah.
He grew up He grew up in Ohio. Like, I believe was a Browns fan, and
he wasn't a Bengals fan growing up. I don't.
Yeah, no, he was not.
What's the worst memory, Breach?
The worst memory, and you know what? Real quick on the Browns not passing, because again, the Bengals were never going to take them. That was never. I didn't want it. They had Carson Palmer, not a big deal. But the Browns were coming off a season where like Kelly Holcomb was horrible. That was, I think, the tail end of Tim Couch's career. Maybe they were afraid to use another top pick on a quarterback because of how much Couch fizzled out. But that was crazy that they passed on him. So my worst memory, and there's a bunch, because Ben Roethlisberger pretty much beat the Bengals all the time until this year. But there is one vivid one because of when it happened and the circumstances and, obviously the playoff losses. But the 2005 playoff loss, as soon as Carson Palmer got injured, I knew the Steelers were winning. It just, that's not a bad Ben Roethlisberger memory. It was just, it was inevitable. It was a Thanos memory. Again, in 2015, Andy Dalton got hurt before the playoff game and didn't start. And again, going into that game, I didn't think there was any chance the Bengals had. So that's not a Ben Roethlisberger memory. It's a Vontez Burfict memory or Pac-Man Jones or Jeremy Hill. That's not Ben Roethlisberger. My Ben Roethlisberger memory is the 2006 season, week 17.
Oh, the Steelers were terrible because Big Ben had the motorcycle accident.
New Year's Eve. It is the final game of the season. It is being played on New Year's Eve. It is December 31st.
I remember
that. The Bengals are 8-7. If they win the game, they are in the playoffs. The Steelers are 7-8. They have nothing to play for. So the Steelers, the only thing they have to play for is to not finish with a losing record.
And the game's in Paul Brown Stadium, I believe.
A game is at Paul Brown Stadium. I was there.
Oh, you were?
I remember this vividly. And so the Steelers kick a field goal, send it to overtime. And in overtime, you're like, you know what? Ben hasn't really done anything all day. We're good. The Bengals are still going to win this. They're still going to get to the playoffs. Literally 90 seconds into overtime, maybe under 90 seconds. I think it was the Steelers' second or third play. Ben Roethlisberger hit Santonio Holmes on a slant, and he takes it 67 yards to the house for a touchdown, and the Steelers win 23-17, and the Bengals miss the playoffs. The Steelers get to go 8-8 on a when Roethlisberger almost died in a motorcycle accident 6 months prior. So that would be My least favorite Ben
That was
Roethlisberger.
Santonio Holmes' rookie season. Big Ben had a terrible year because of the injuries, and that game was their Super Bowl. Bill Cowher retired a short time later.
Yep. Cowher's
Yeah,
last game. Yeah.
absolutely. That's
Four,
hysterical.
4 NFL quarterbacks in the history of professional football have 35 or more fourth quarter comebacks. Can you name the 4 quarterbacks?
Brady.
Well, Ben and Peyton Manning were on the graphic that we just saw.
Ding, ding, ding.
So Brady has to be on there.
Roethlisberger.
Probably Kirk Cousins, some random. So
it's Breeze is the 4th. And I knew if I did 3, it would be Brady, Manning, and Ben.
Breach, let me ask you this. Because
by the way, do you know who is number 5 with 34 fourth quarter comebacks?
I hope it's Phillip Rivers.
Is it Stafford? I actually was going to guess him at number 4. Is like, this is why Brinson's bringing this up right now, so we can get Stafford in the conversation.
Manning has 43, Brady 42, Ben 41. I mean, just my point was like, I think that's the other thing about Ben that you just like, you always, if Ben had the ball, for as goofy and Roethlisberger as he is, like
lumbering.
He was stone cold in the clutch, man. That guy, when he had the ball, you felt like he was going to try and walk you down. 13, Tom Brady, ridiculous. 35 playoff wins for Tom Brady. Montana, second at 16, and then Manning, Elway, Bradshaw, 14, Big Ben, and Favre, 13.
Yeah. Now, you were talking about your sort of general vision of Big Ben as him breaking free of tackles in the backfield. One of the specific memories, Haloti Ngata, it must have been a Sunday night game because Collinsworth was calling it. Haloti Ngata broke his nose on a play against the Ravens. He stayed in, and I think it may have been the same game, maybe a different game, in which he basically fought off Terrell Suggs, who had him in his grasp and would have tackled any other quarterback, was able to throw the ball away, which was one of the best incompletions I've ever seen, let alone Big Ben incompletions. Yeah, and you sort of forget the first 7, 8, 9 years of his career. He was actually mobile, and you talked about it. He's a little Josh Allen. Never quite that fast, but you could not tackle him in the backfield, and he could actually run a little bit and get around the corner. Obviously, that wasn't going to be the case the last 7 or 8 years or so, but I mean, the Steelers are the Bengals or the Browns if they don't have Big Ben over the last 18 years.
That's actually a great what if. Like, let's say that Brian Billick doesn't run it up with Jamal Lewis, and the Steelers never get Ben.
They take Sean Andrews, a guard out of Arkansas, for Tommy Maddox.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's easy to point. It's like the Steelers have had continuity for 50 years and only had ex-coaches. Like, well, that's what happens when you have 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks back to back. It's like the Packers. Steelers.
Yeah, again, the hallmark is Breach. Would you rather them have taken Sean Andrews or Big Ben? And I'm sure Breach is a Bengals fan. We all know the answer.
An offensive lineman or a 2-time Super Bowl winning quarterback.
All right, can't talk about Ben without mentioning his off-field issues. Breach touched on the motorcycle accident when he's riding a motorcycle without a helmet, and there was, of course, the sexual assault allegations filed. He was suspended by the NFL, never actually convicted of anything. Those things can be a little tricky when it comes to how the legal process goes through versus how the NFL handles it. Certainly, I think. I mean, it's. The guy's retiring. He's a Hall of Fame quarterback, slam dunk. But you can't really talk about. I mean, you have to bring that up as part of his legacy, right? I mean, like that, it complicates things, right, Wilson?
Oh, of course. In 2010, when this was all coming to a head, I wanted them to trade him, and I was trying to figure out landing spots. I was like, let's trade him to the Rams for Sam Bradford straight up. Or maybe they had the first overall pick and they ended up taking Sam Bradford. I was willing to make that deal. Someone reported on Thursday that Mike Singletary said that he vetoed a deal for Big Ben to go to San Francisco. I don't know how much truth there is to that. I think Pro Football Talk talked about that. I don't know if there's any veracity to that as well, just because I don't know how much pull Mike Singletary had, and he wasn't there very long. But I think there were some conversations, probably I would have to imagine, inside the organization about what to do with Roethlisberger, because there were some serious allegations. Now, as we noted when we were looking at the family picture there during his goodbye video, he seems to have gotten himself on the straight and narrow and has done and said all the right things over the last 7, 8, 9, 10 years or so. So, credit to him for that, but there's no sort of hiding from the other stuff that led us to that point.
Yeah, and there was 2 of them, and I think that is the key that you got to remember. This wasn't like a one-time situation where he got drunk and made the wrong decision, and not that excuses anything. He still needs to be punished, and you still have to talk about it. But you had the one in Nevada in July 2008, and then you had the one in Georgia in March 2010, and that's just, it's unacceptable, and it's a stain on your life. It's a stain on your career. You've probably ruined these. These people are going to be the women in this situation. This is something they're going to think about the rest of their lives. And I know, Brinson, you mentioned he didn't get charged with anything, but he did settle definitely the Nevada case in a civil lawsuit. And I don't remember exactly what happened at the end of the Georgia case, but so there is, obviously when you make a settlement, you're not admitting guilt, but you're kind of trying to put that behind you. And so, yeah, I do agree with Wilson that he's done and said all the right things for the past 12 years, but those women have to live with that for the past 12 years. So there's no getting around it. And I think it's absolutely something that needs to be talked about when he's up for the Hall of Fame in 2027.
So, I mean, I remember we covered this at Fan House. Like, we were working at Fan House at the time, and it was, but I'm trying to recall specifically, did he appeal his suspension down to?
Yeah, I think it may have gotten reduced. It may have been 6 down to 4, but
was
Byron
the initial-
Leftwich actually started those games in 2010, and
Oh my God, that's right. That's crazy.
The first game this year, I believe, I have to double check. I have to look real quickly. I think it was against the Titans. I think they beat the Titans.
Falcons. They won 15. They won 3 of 4. It was
there you
against the Falcons. They won 15-9. Titans 19-11.
And then, you know what? Here's what happened. The Buccaneers in there too.
Yep, beat the Buccaneers.
So
and then
Byron
lost
got
to the
hurt.
Ravens.
Charlie Batch had to come
Batch
in.
came in. That's right.
And he was winging the ball down in Tampa Bay. They won that game because I think Mike Wallace had a big game. And this is all memory, because I used to watch those games a lot more closely than I do now. But that's right. So they were able
catches for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns for Mike Wallace that day. Yep.
Yeah.
Charlie Batch played the whole game. Man, that's wild.
Mhm.
And it's crazy that he missed those 4 games and then they go to the Super Bowl.
That's also how it happened with the Deflategate, right?
Right.
Yep.
So
yeah, that's how. Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
obviously.
obviously for different reasons. It was the stupid football.
But Brady
you know what?
suspended for 4 games. Then gets the Super Bowl.
I think you're wrong about what did Leftwich start week 1?
Yeah, it may have been Dennis Dixon.
It was Dennis Dixon. Yeah, it was
Dennis Dixon. So Leftwich came in, I think, at some point when Big Ben got hurt. He played against the Dolphins and did really well, if I'm recalling correctly. But that's right. Dennis Dixon started. He struggled.
Dennis Dixon
out of Oregon, because he was a mobile quarterback, maybe a little ahead of his time, struggled with accuracy. And then Charlie Batch came in, who was so much fun to watch. He was just a old school gunslinger.
Yeah. They beat and because remember that Tampa Bay team that they beat was coached by Raheem Morris, who had replaced
Josh Freeman, the quarterback. Then he was
Josh Freeman and Josh Johnson played in that game, but
he had
Mike
drawn
Tomlin was
comparisons
on
to
the staff with Raheem Morris in Tampa Bay when they won the Super Bowl, right?
Right. I think Raheem Morris is pretty young. That was 2002, so I'm not sure.
I'm positive they were on the staff at the same time.
Okay.
Because I was looking, because the running gag was Sean McVay. Washington had Sean McVay, but they also but Tampa had Sean McVay and Mike Tomlin. So I think Tomlin. Yeah, Tomlin's a 3-time or 2-time Super Bowl winner. One as assistant coach and once as a head coach.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, so, I mean, look, Ben. Yeah, I mean, it was a thing. You know, I mean, it was a big deal.
Complicated legacy.
The story of the offseason, if I recall correctly, in 2000.
It's a huge story.
Yeah, and he is I saw somebody in the chat maybe suggested he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer. He is 100% a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Unless he gets punished for his off-field stuff and gets held to the second ballot. It's like a principle thing.
No, the Hall of Fame notoriously says that it's on field that matters, not off field.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people thought Terrell Owens was going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
But he wasn't he didn't do anything off the field. He was just a jerk to the media.
Right. And so I'm saying that they say that they're not taking it into account, that they might. I mean, he's going to get in. There's no doubt about it. And I'm saying the one way you'd punish him is making him a second. Hey, I don't have Hall of Fame vote. I'm just telling you based on what we've seen from.
Owens is the only example, and people just didn't like Terrell Owens. And Terrell Owens was a absolute slam dunk first ballot Hall of Famer. I think the only way. So I guess Rivers hasn't. Let's see, Rivers didn't play this year. I'm trying to think, are Eli and Rivers up in the same year? No, Eli retired 2 years ago, right?
Rivers and Breeze are up the same year. Manning's a year before.
Yeah, so
it's going to be hysterical when Manning gets in and Rivers has to wait 3 years. Brinson's going to go on a tirade.
Yep.
Or what if Brady and Gronk both retire this year?
Philip Rivers may never get in. Is that what you're saying?
Now there's a path. That's the path for Ben Roethlisberger not to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Is Tom Brady and Gronk retire this
Gronk
year?
ain't getting him before Big Ben. Get out of here.
He's a great. I mean, he's better at his position.
I was going to say, who's better at their position? You think Ben's a better quarterback than Gronk was a tight end?
Oh,
yes.
Gronk is the Tom Brady of tight ends.
He didn't. He.
What if Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady both retire this year?
Oh man, you can't put all three quarterbacks in the same year.
Yeah.
Why not?
They're weird like that. They defer to it. That's like why it's easier that Eli, Rivers, and Ben are all separate classes, because
there's no way on God's green earth that Gronkowski is getting in before Big Ben. That's just idiotic.
Clip it and save, Devo.
Clip it and save it.
I'm team Brinson Breach on this one.
Yeah,
that's all right. You also watched American Gangsters that are watching the Steelers win the Super Bowl. Devo.
I don't regret it.
One of the greatest.
My man.
My man.
All right. So, oh yeah, we got to give away a Paramount Plus gift card.
Ooh,
I'm
here for that. Really want to be here for that.
Congratulations, Mike Kinney. You are our Paramount Plus winner. You get a $100 gift card. Debo will reach out to you. Thanks to everyone for listening, for subscribing, for rating.
Real quick, I'm going to extend this. Did we talk about what's next for the Steelers at quarterback?
Oh, we didn't. Good call, Debo. I'm punch drunk right now.
They are trading their first round pick, Dwayne Haskins and Mason Rudolph, to Cincinnati for Joe Burrow.
That would be amazing.
Like, Breach, would you quit watching football if that happened?
But it happens this week. So
what's his name?
It's so preposterous, I can't even give it an answer.
Burrow doesn't even play in the AFC Championship game.
Would that be more devastating than the 2016 January playoff loss?
Wait, what did the Bengals get in return?
Doesn't matter. They get a first-round pick, the 20th overall pick.
Seven first-round picks?
And sure, we'll give you 7 first-round picks.
Oh, we don't want 7 first-round.
I was going to say, you're not going to do it.
No deal.
So Mason Rudolph and Dwayne Haskins will have an opportunity.
You wouldn't trade Burrow to the Steelers for 7 first-round picks?
I wouldn't. That'd be idiotic.
You're not even allowed to trade 7.
Right. What about 70? Mason Rudolph and Dwayne Haskins will get a chance, as Mike Tomlin has stated, but he said it in a fashion in which it felt like he wasn't serious. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers you would love to get, but as Bridget and I talked about on HQ, Nathaniel Hackett is now the guy in Denver, and we know that Aaron Rodgers loves Nathaniel Hackett based on his comments from a year and a half ago. Russ Wilson, Pittsburgh isn't a big market area. Deshaun Watson, we just talked about a quarterback that had some off-field stuff. I don't know if you want to bring another guy in. That's usually not how the organization approaches these things. So then there's the draft. I mean, is Derek Carr an upgrade? Yeah. Is he worth the 20th overall pick? You know what? He might be, like, for real. They have a lot of cap space. Like, Derek Carr, fix the offensive line. I don't hate that. I wanted Marcus Mariota a few years ago, but clearly Marcus Mariota, I don't think he's no longer an answer. Danny Cannell has said previously, our coworker, that Jameis Winston. I don't want Jameis Winston. I am all out on Jameis. I would be more upset than the Steelers, than Breach would be had the Steelers traded for Joe Burrow if the Steelers get Kirk Cousins. Like, I do not want, under any circumstances, Kirk Cousins. What are you making a face for, Brinson? You think that makes sense?
You be if you have to deal with 1 year of Kirk Cousins versus the Bengals trading their franchise,
I would be livid
inside the division. I think Breach would be a little more upset.
But my point is that it would be almost the worst case. I would rather
you'd have Joe Burrow tattooed right here, and you would wear like a little like low hanging, or you'd get Joe Burrow tattooed on your forehead.
Ryan Finley, maybe.
And no, but you would taunt. I mean, Breach would have to quit his job and move to.
My point is that why
Antarctica?
Why give up anything for Kirk Cousins when you could just start Mason Rudolph for a year and then fix the quarterback situation a year from now?
I think the Steelers quarterback thing is really interesting because you have whoever's coming in is replacing a Hall of Famer, but there's a good enough roster, more or less, outside of the offensive line that this is a playoff caliber team. We know, with a great head coach and Mike Tomlin, who's never had a losing season.
They've never had salary cap space. They have a ton this year. All you need is a couple offensive linemen, and you need some pieces on defense. But I think, like, Derek Carr seems reasonable, and I think it does cost you a first-round pick. I'm fine giving up the 20th overall pick for Derek Carr.
You would rather have Derek Carr over Kirk Cousins?
Yes.
I mean, what are you doing?
Would you agree, Brinson?
I would take Derek Carr for the. I mean, I think he'd be He'd be more expensive to acquire, but he is cheaper to maintain.
Now, look, I'll trade a 4th-round pick for Kirk Cousins. Sure, I'm not giving up 1 cent more than that.
I wouldn't want Cousins with his contract.
And Breach, I think you've said this. It seems like his teammates don't even like him that much. Was that us that talked about that?
Yeah, I mean, but maybe his teammates in Pittsburgh will like him.
Yeah, your teammates in Cincinnati would love that his teammates in Pittsburgh hate him.
I think the
Jimmy Garoppolo, no thank you. Someone, Jaron Franklin mentioned that in the chat. I don't want Jimmy Garoppolo. Not for a 2nd-round pick. No.
I mean, do you think the Steelers are they what are the Steelers doing? Like what is the state of their organization relative, like a rebuild, reload, retool? You know what I mean? Like
they won't say rebuild. I don't know. I mean, they won 9 games this year, which is I think they won more games than the Chargers, or as many games as the Chargers. Think about that. Again, the offensive line, the playoffs, offensive line is going to get better because they're young, and you can add a few pieces, especially at center. They need to bolster the defense. I don't know if Stephon Tuitt, the talk now is that the people aren't sure if he's going to play again. Cam Hayward's going to be older, but they have TJ Watt. They have Minka Fitzpatrick. They need some help at cornerback. I think they're perfectly replacement level team, which is a 500 team or 9-7-1 team. You need a quarterback. You have Najee Harris. You have Deontay Johnson. You can bring back Juju Smith-Schuster if he wants to come back, and he says he does. We'll see. I think there are probably 16 teams that would love to be the Steelers, and there are 15 teams that are glad they're not the Steelers. I don't think they're in a bad spot. I'm actually sort of interested to see how this plays out. It'll be sort of fun to watch, knowing that you don't have a franchise quarterback, how you fix it and make it work. But I think realistic, like Aaron Rodgers, 3 first-round picks I'm giving up for. I think Denver's number 1. If we're thinking he's not coming to Green Bay. For me right now,
I guess my question is like, Kevin Colbert is retiring, right? Didn't it?
There's conversations. There
was like a conflicting report from John.
Either
Clinton.
this year or next year, but I think that the hire will probably be in-house. It sounds like. But I'll say quickly, at the top of my realistic quarterback wish list is, in fact, I can't believe this, Derek Carr, because I don't think Aaron Rodgers is a possibility. If he's a possibility, for sure. But Derek Carr for the 20th overall pick. If you're the Raiders, are you trading Derek Carr for the 20th overall pick?
Well, let me ask you real quick. What would you give up for Aaron Rodgers?
3
first-rounders?
Yeah.
Because then you have a 2-year window where you're probably the Super Bowl favorite behind the Chiefs. Maybe
he's playing for 3 years. That's fine, but you're always going to be behind.
But
the
you're
Chiefs.
A top 3 team in the AFC for as long as he's your quarterback.
Right? Yeah, that's worth it. Because again, we overvalue these 1st-round picks. Like
I would guess that what we see from the Steelers could end up being really similar to what we saw in Baltimore, where Ozzie Newsome, final year as a GM, conducts one last draft with Eric. And look, when Ozzie's making what you do is as the outgoing GM, you're making the picks, but I mean, it's being made in concert with Eric DeCosta, the
guy. It seems like that's probably coming in-house. And like Ozzie Newsome said, Kevin Colbert said the same thing. I want to leave this place in better shape than when I got here.
Right, of course. And sorry.
No, I was going to say, even at 20, like if none of these things happen, then at 20, you draft a quarterback. The top quarterback I want is Matt Corral because he can run for his life.
And maybe it's Kenny Pickett. Maybe it's Sam Howell. I mean,
it better not be Sam Howell.
I know you don't like him, but Sam Howell can run for his life too. My point being is that when you do that as an organization, like Lamar Jackson is Ozzie Newsome's pick. If Lamar Jackson hadn't worked out for whatever reason, Eric DeCosta was not going to take the fall for it, but Eric DeCosta gets all the credit for it because he was. And so I think, let's say it's Omar Khan that they promote to be the new GM, which I think he's the odds-on favorite. What?
I'm laughing because in the comments, some people keep saying, what about Andy Dalton to a 1-year deal to serve as a bridge quarterback? And Stephen B says Andy Dalton would be on the IR by quarter 2 of week 1.
My God.
Which is true.
Andy Dalton as the Steelers week 1 quarterback would be incredible.
Andy Dalton or Kirk Cousins?
Andy Dalton.
I would just want Dalton, so Wilson has to hate.
I'm fine with. I don't hate.
I don't
Andy
think Dalton would be horrible in Pittsburgh, to be honest.
I don't want Kirk Cousins. Andy Dalton would be much more affordable. Anyway, go ahead with the.
You hear that? He's open to it. He just opened. There's a path.
There's a path.
Andy Dalton siding with the Steelers.
Oh my God! What if Andy Dalton? That would be actually incredible if Andy
Dalton beats the Bengals twice.
No, but Andy Dalton beats Bengals
and
twice.
Those are the Steelers' only 2 wins of the season.
Wrong.
But the Steelers actually win 9 games with Andy Dalton, and it's all full circle with Wilson's. There's a path.
That would be it. Yes.
Sweet mercy. At any rate, it wouldn't be shocking if Colbert comes in, runs the draft, and then steps away. Omar Khan takes over, and you draft that quarterback with one of your first round picks, believing that he's the next guy.
Sam Darnold's a name that's been thrown around the chat too.
He
Hard
sucks.
pass on Sam Darnold.
What about Ryan Fitzpatrick for a year?
Hard pass on Ryan Fitzpatrick. He can't even. He's like an old man now. He's had hip replacement surgery.
Phillip Rivers?
No Phillip. No Tyrod Taylor.
What about Mitchell Trubisky?
That's
intriguing. Now, here's the thing. We joke about Mr. Trubisky. You're giving up the 20th overall pick to draft Matt Corral. Matt Corral could very easily be worse than Mr. Trubisky. We just don't know. So I would trade. I'm not trading a third rounder for Mr. Trubisky. Would you trade a third rounder for Mr. Trubisky?
Well, I don't think you have to trade anything because his contract. He's signed a 1-year deal in Buffalo. He's gonna be free agent.
And they won't tag him, obviously, because you have to pay him.
So what do you think of going to free agent? I bet
Trubisky would be intriguing.
Derek Carr's number 1 for first round pick, and then Mr. Trubisky you signed to.
I would much rather have Trubisky as a free agent competing with Dwayne Haskins, who I think at least you have to.
Ooh, I don't hate that because he can run.
Well, and a commenter just brought up the name I was going to bring up because obviously I have to.
No.
Would you trade a third round pick for Gardner Minshew?
No, of course.
My God.
Although I will say this, I don't think he minds me speaking out of school. Our buddy, JJ, what's JJ's last name? I can't remember JJ's last name.
Jonathan Jones?
No, works for Baseball America, lives in Durham.
JJ
Whiteside?
JJ Cooper.
JJ Cooper, right. We used to do a Steelers block together. I spaced on his last name, but we were talking the other day, and he said he wouldn't hate the idea of Gardner Minshew, not for a third round pick because he's not insane, but just coming in there winging the ball around. I don't know. There's too much silliness going on with Gardner. I'd rather have Mr. Trubisky, I think. Would you rather have Mr. Trubisky or Gardner, Breach?
You know what I want?
Trubisky.
Okay.
I want Gardner Minshew traded for a third round pick and to Pittsburgh. And Andy Dalton signed as a free agent.
Oh, jeez.
And then Andy Dalton
trying to kill me?
Beats out Gardner Minshew.
Guess what I'll be doing on Sundays? Watching American Gangster.
Andy Dalton signs with the Steelers. I am buying Wilson an Andy Dalton Steelers jersey.
You heard it here first. I'll wear it every Sunday.
And he has to wear it every
I'm
podcast.
Wait, don't you have to take a bath in Cincinnati chili, Breach?
Oh, we gotta cut it, man. I'm pretty sure I said if Randy Bullock beats the Bengals with a 50-yarder. Nobody sent the clip because I think that's what I said. But again, I don't remember, so I could be wrong.
Wilson just left. Now SportsCenter is running the Big Ben complicated legacy pieces, which should be not surprising at all. Gardner Minshew under contract for 1 more year with Debo's Eagles. So this would just be a very incestuous move if the Steelers traded a third round pick for Ben Roethlisberger, for Gardner Minshew.
To be hilarious.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess that's it for the Debo. Do we need to do anything else? Wait for Wilson to come back?
No, let's end this thing. Right. Wilson's not here. Kind of like Big Ben being absent for the past.
I'll wave twice.
Seasons.
My goodness.
1 hand for Wilson, 1 hand for me.
All right. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We will probably see you guys again on. Actually, you know what? Oh my God, 25 minutes we'll be doing a live show where we make picks for the conference championship. So don't leave your YouTube page just quite yet.
You're not gonna have a voice, Prince. You're not gonna be able to talk on Sunday. We're gonna have to Amir Wilson host the show.
I'm gonna go eat some food. All right. See you guys later.